Hello everyone! On today's episode of Terrius Talks Tech, we have three topics again. Once again, we have the Intel Management Engine topic. It appears that more flaws have been revealed since last time we talked about it 2 weeks ago. On a more positive Intel note, we also have some leaks about the 8th and 9th generation processors. Our third and final topic is going to be about the AMD mobile chips, the mobile Ryzen APUs, and the first one that's been benchmarked. So the first topic here comes from the register. It also comes from Intel's website directly, and that is about the critical holes in the management engine, or the Intel management engine. Now, of course, 2 weeks ago we found out that you could have physical access to the system and gain access to this Intel management engine and compromise the system. But since then, Intel actually did an audit, a security audit on the management engine itself, and found out that you could also easily get access remotely. Now, of course, this bug can be exploited to extract info and potentially insert rootkits that would be completely invisible to system administrators or the users or anybody. So on Monday, November 20th, Intel admitted its management engine, server platform services, and trusted execution engine are vulnerable to multiple worrying security flaws based on findings of external security experts. The firmware level bugs allow login administrators and malicious or hijacked high-privilege processes to run code beneath the operating system to spy on or meddle with the computer completely out of sight of other users and administrators. And the more worrying part, the hole can be exploited by network administrators or people masquerading as administrators to remotely infect machines with spyware and invisible rootkits potentially. So that's kind of the worrying part here, is because of the access that this gives you to a system, it basically lets you manipulate the memory. It also lets you intercept basically anything going into the memory. So if there's for some reason a password that's passed into memory without being encrypted, then they could potentially take that data and use that data. They can also, of course, insert bits where they're not supposed to be and change around the memory bits so that you basically cause instability in an application or force it to crash. So there's lots of different things they can do that would be terrible, and it's all enabled by this Intel management engine. It affects 6th, 7th, and 8th generation Intel Core processors, Intel Xeon E3, V5, and V6 processors, Intel Xeon Scalable processors, Intel Xeon W processors, Intel Atom C3000 processors, Apollo Lake Atom E3900 series processors, Apollo Lake Intel Pentiums, Celeron N and Celeron J series processors. So the good thing is that Intel released a security review basically telling everybody about this issue, and they also offer a detection tool. So if you're running any of the latest Intel processors from the 6th generation up, then you definitely want to make sure that you come to the Intel webpage and download their detection tool and verify that your computer is either safe or not safe. Intel has released a support article, and it basically goes through and says that the vulnerability is in the management engine, the trusted execution engine, and the server platform services. And then it tells you those same processors that are affected by it. If your system is vulnerable according to their tool, then you have to wait for your motherboard manufacturer to push out an update for it. One of the worst parts about this is that this basically requires the end user to update their BIOS, which, if you've done it a lot, if you've updated your BIOS often in the past, it's no big deal. However, if you're a complete novice and you've never updated your BIOS before, that can be quite the daunting task, finding exactly how to do it, and then there's always the possibility that something goes wrong. There are some motherboards that, of course, have dual BIOS, so that if something goes wrong on one, it just automatically loads into the other, but that's not a super common feature these days. It's mostly only on gigabyte boards. A lot of people will probably end up bringing their systems into service centers and having the technicians update the BIOS for them, and that costs quite a bit of money. Another part of the Intel processors earlier this year also had this issue with the remote execution of code, and it was also built into this Intel management engine. So overall, it seems like the main flaw in the Intel processors is the management engine itself. So hopefully this will kind of wake Intel up a little bit, and they'll change how they are using the management engine in the future to make it more secure. The unfortunate thing is that since this is built into the processors, there's really nothing that can be done other than a BIOS update to prevent this exploit. It's not a perfect prevention because you're only affecting the firmware on the motherboard, you're not affecting the actual microcode on the processor. So the processor is always going to have this vulnerability. It's just whether or not it's plugged into a motherboard or system that has the patch to fix it. If you want to know more about this, then of course I will leave the link to the Intel articles and the register article in the section below, as well as a link to the detection tool from their website. I would definitely recommend that anybody running an Intel processor from the 6000 series up run the tool, make sure that your system's safe, and if it's not, then definitely keep an eye on your motherboard manufacturer's website for an update to it. I know Asus has pushed out the update to a few of their boards so far, but I'm not sure about the rest of the manufacturers. Okay, so on a lighter note, we have an article from Anandtech about leaked 8th generation and 9th generation processor information from Intel. So of course, they start the article by saying, officially Intel does not comment on unreleased products, which often has the knock-on effect that processors aren't actually known about until the day they appear on shelves. In order to find information early, it comes down to software and retailers to expose the details. One of the most interesting things that is shown on this page is that they're adding Core i9 branding to their mobile processors, as well as they're bringing 6-core 12-thread processors into the mobile market as a mainstream thing for high-end laptops. They have 6-core 6-thread notebooks for the mid-range, and 4-core 4-thread notebooks for the low end. So hopefully this will push a lot more application developers to start utilizing multi-core capability more, because Intel is now rolling out across their entire line to this 6-core norm. And next up they have the rest of the information for the 8000 series that haven't been launched yet. So this information could potentially be interesting. It's confusing because it looks like they've added a new suffix to their CPUs. They've added a B, so nobody's quite sure exactly what the B series is, whether it's replacing the S series or if it's a new designation for some reason. Basically what you'd expect from the remainder of the 8000 series chips. There's nothing in here that's surprising or all that terribly exciting. The exciting thing was already that they had their mainstream processors are going to be 6 cores. They're already out, so we already know that already. They are adding in an 8650K and an 8650 above the 8600K, which they already have out, so that's curious. I would assume that that probably is going to be running at the same frequencies as the 8700K, and that the only difference there will be that the hyperthreading is disabled, but it will be interesting to see what actually happens with that. Aside from that, some of the information was leaked for the 9th generation processors. So theoretically, the 9th generation processors are intended to be on the 10 nanometer node. So in the leaked information, it shows that there's i5 processors and i3 processors, but no leaked information on the i7 processors. And of course, hopefully as time goes on, Anandtech will fill out this data table and populate it with any information they find out about it. So in 2018, they're supposed to be releasing their 8th generation Canon-like CPUs, so I'm not sure what those will be named, but the 9000 series ones are also supposed to be releasing in 2018. So it's definitely going to be interesting next year. There's a lot of speculation about the Intel processors and when they're going to launch, and then there's also lots of speculation on the AMD side about when Ryzen 2 is going to launch. So it's quite possible that next year will be just as interesting from the CPU release standpoint as this year has been, and if it is, then that's just great for the tech industry, because that means that there's going to be a lot of advancements and there's going to be a lot of push on developers to start utilizing this more powerful hardware. They've kind of become complacent in the whole quad-core CPU era. They don't really care about optimizing for more cores than that for a lot of applications, and I think Intel adopting these multi-core CPUs will be a real kick in the pants for them. There's some rumors that the i7s of the 9th generation are going to be 8-core, 16-thread chips, but so far there's no information to actually back that up. It's just word-of-mouth rumors passing around so far. So yeah, hopefully next year will be just as interesting as this year was for CPUs. And now finally we have the Ryzen mobile benchmarks, the Ryzen 5 2500U. So this article comes from notebookcheck.net, and there's also one from Tech Report. So these two companies have both done reviews on it. And Notebook Check says that the Cinebench scores are painting a very impressive picture for the AMD mid-range mobile offering. It's essentially identical to the i5 8250U in both single-threaded and multi-threaded loads, and it's even comparable to the 7300HQ, which is found in mainstream gaming notebooks, and is consistently slower than the AMD processor. The AMD processor got 137 points in Cinebench single-threaded, got 574 points in multi-threaded, so that's pretty decent for a laptop. It's actually more powerful than a Ryzen 3 1300X. And then of course they did benchmarking on the graphics chip as well, and it did reasonably well. For being onboard graphics, it performs about as well as the 940MX does from GeForce, and definitely tons better than the Intel integrated graphics. You can see Intel integrated very low on the scale. So according to notebookcheck.net, the power consumption, while idle, was pretty good, as well as under load it was really good, and then in Witcher under ultra settings it was reasonable. They're expecting to post a more full-bodied review next week sometime, which I believe is this week because I believe this was posted last week. And then we have the Tech Report article, which is really good. Now I'm not going to show off all of the charts and stuff because if you want to see that you should definitely come over to Tech Report. So we're just going to take a look at the conclusion briefly here. So they're saying that so far its 4-core Zen CPU is finally offering a competitive performance against the Intel latest chips in a wide variety of tasks, and the Vega 8 integrated graphics processor offers smooth and responsive entry-level gaming experiences that the Blue Team's CPUs can't match. So they found that it's definitely no replacement for the GeForce MX 150, which is a dedicated graphics card rather than integrated graphics, so can kind of expect that. It hits multi-threaded parity with the 8250U, and they're saying that AMD has finally got the competitive CPU cores it desperately needed to compete against the Intel chips. They expect the strongest way for AMD's partners to make the case for this CPU will be to have it cheaper than the Intel equivalents. Currently an i5 powered Ultrabook with an MX 150, 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of SSD are around $700 to $800. So they think if the partners can get it down to about $600 in the same form factor, then the AMD chips will be a really great seller on that. With only 2 real reviews out on this so far, we don't actually have all that much data to compare and say whether or not these chips are going to be successful, but initially at least it's looking promising for the Ryzen mobile chips. So that's all for this episode of Terrius Talks Tech. If you liked this video, then be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you feel like it, then definitely share it with your friends if you know other people that might be interested. If you have any questions or comments, then definitely be sure to leave them in the comment section below, or you can email them to me, or you can tweet them to me. If you haven't already, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. There should be an icon showing up somewhere around here. I'm trying to release a Terrius Talks Tech video every Tuesday and a Tinkering with Terrius every Thursday. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I look forward to making more videos for you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.